For those of you who have been watching my channel for a while now, you know that immersive sims are my favorite genre along with RPGs, and there's a specific reason for that. Games like Prey, Dishonored, and Deus Ex all revolve around that core idea that more freedom is more better. When a game can radically realize you, that is, react to anything and everything you can throw at it, it becomes infinitely more memorable. If you flirt with one character behind another character's back and they find out and confront you, that's an example of a game giving you consequences for your actions. And in both narrative and combat, this is so important, especially for RPGs, something immersive sims figured out a long time ago. And in Baldur's Gate 3's case, it nails both. In combat, it feels like you have almost limitless possibilities on how to tackle different situations, and because of how systems driven each encounter is, you can wind up in very unforgettable moments. I distinctly remember at one point in the game at a low level, I accidentally stumbled upon a hidden underground den that was home to a spider queen, and over I kept trying to figure out how to best her and her spider babies in battle, but each time I was slaughtered and had to reload a save. I wasn't nearly powerful enough to take on the challenge at the time, but on my last attempt I threw a fireball at the queen and accidentally missed, instead hitting a web beneath her feet, and when the fireball collided with this surface, it lit the entire thing on fire and caused it to disappear, sending the spider queen falling towards the ground, and just to my luck, right towards a massive hole in the cave, which she then disappeared into forever. It's moments like this that make Baldur's Gate 3 so special. This wasn't a planned bit. You aren't supposed to kill the spider queen this way, and in fact, if you do, you aren't even able to loot her body for some special surprises. But it's the fact that the game even allowed for this possibility on the off chance that the queen did stand over the hole that makes this game so exciting. And it's not even close to the only example of this. The entirety of Baldur's Gate's combat relies on instances like this, where you can pull off fantastic and impressive feats all by just using your own mind. And it's when an RPG gives you freedom like this that it makes all those intricate builds and decisions you make outside of the core experience that much more impactful. Picking the Firebolt spell for my build isn't just a mindless damage buff in case I'm out of spell slots. Fire can remove webs, ignite certain surfaces, or even be used to solve specific puzzles. Each and every spell in your arsenal is not good only for direct damage or support in combat, but also for just coming up with interesting ways to solve problems. For instance, Shadowheart as a cleric has a water spell when you first find her, and this can be used to extinguish fire or remove other things like grease on the floor, meaning you can often use this spell in ingenious ways to find new entrances or exits to places. Or maybe you could just cast water on the ground and then cast a lightning spell to obliterate enemy forces by electrocuting them. You could use the Featherfall spell to be able to jump from great heights and survive, or you could use it on an enemy that is trying to jump to their deaths when they're running from you and force them to survive so that you can then talk to them about your quest. And the most important part of it all is no matter what you do, the game reacts appropriately. When you play a game like Baldur's Gate 3, it almost retroactively makes you look back at other games and realize all of their limitations. Even in games where you can sneak, fight, or talk your way past every encounter, that's just the issue. It's all predetermined. Each path was constructed before you got there, and every way to solve issues is already laid out. The truly amazing part of an RPG like Baldur's Gate 3 is that it feels more like a theme park, where you simply walk into each encounter, realize your goals, and set out on a way to solve it literally any way you want. And no matter what you do, no matter how weird, outside the box, or unexpected, the game is expected to react in tow. To me, this is the true dream that we were originally promised by RPGs, a role player's paradise where you can be whoever you want and do whatever you feel like, just like the experience you would have at a dungeon master's table in the real world. Because even though writing, story, world, and characters are all massively important, as I touched on, these are all things we see great examples of in movies, books, and television. It's only in games like this where we can find something even more special, the ability for a game to radically realize you and your actions. And it's not just in the combat where this is apparent. Even in the story of Baldur's Gate 3 and the quest, it feels like there are just endless possibilities in how things could play out. In just one example in the game, you discover that the druids are being led by a new and evil dictator who has taken control of the power vacuum with their original leader's absence. And the amount of ways this entire encounter can play out is almost dizzying. You can kill her the second you find her and cause an uprising. You can trick her into being so so ruthless her people turn against her. You can discover a note in her hidden lair that will lead you to discover a secret that can turn her servants on her. You can find the original leader of the tribe and bring him back to stop her, or you can convince him that she was actually good for the druids all along. You can trick the druids into being distracted while you push her down a mountain, or you could simply try and talk everyone into helping you find the original leader instead. There are so many different options and potential game states for each and every quest and mission you go on, and the decisions you make in all of your previous encounters can drastically affect how everything plays out. Remember how earlier I mentioned I was able to break into the kids' hideout because I was a gnome? Well, when I got there, I was also able to convince the kids to trust me. And the reason I was able to do that was because I had previously saved a tiefling child who was being lured by a siren on the beach, and he vouched for me to the group, which gained me trust with him. And after they showed me the entrance to the lair where I could get the rest of my party members in. It's subtle changes to how the game plays out like this that make the world feel so much more immersive, so reactive. And the reason this is so important in games like RPGs is because it pulls you into the world and its mechanics more than anything else possibly could. When you've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 for long across multiple different playthroughs, you begin to see just how differently situations and encounters can play out. You start to realize just how important every decision you make in creating your character and party really is. Bringing certain party members to certain quests can completely change how the story goes. And even just having one spell that you originally thought sucked in a crucial moment can save entire main story characters. And this level of reactivity in the world makes everything in the game so much better. When I know just how important any spell or decision I make is, it makes those decisions and character build choices extremely engaging. Because instead of just thinking about how I need a new AoE spell to fight lots of mobs because my damage output is low, I'm thinking about how my decisions might affect who my character is, what they stand for, and how they'll interact with the game world, and what cool new ways I can solve problems with what I'm getting. Maybe more than any RPG I've played, Baldur's Gate 3 shows that this is what the genre should be like. Don't get me wrong, I love a bunch of other styles of RPGs too, as I've already touched on, but this level of choice and decision making is so crucial to pulling the player into a world fully. And to be more precise, it's not just that this game has a lot of choice and consequence. That can be seen in other games too. It's that the choices and consequences feel like they have so much freedom attached to them. For example, when I'm playing a game like Fallout New Vegas, for many people one of the greatest RPGs of all time, there is a lot of awesome decisions to be made, and depending on your character build and stats, you may or may not be able to pass dialogue checks at important moments to cause changes in the story. But there's a level beyond that Baldur's Gate 3 reaches for. Instead of making those decisions so telegraphed and obvious, instead they can literally just happen by trying out something unexpected in the game, like deciding to use Featherfall down that hole that the spider fell into and discovering an entirely new zone. Moments like this in Baldur's Gate don't happen because they were just one branch of a massive network of decision trees that make up a game. They happen because you, the player, made a choice that even the developers might not have expected to ever happen, and the game accounts for it. This is what RPGs should be all about. This is what the promise of real role-playing has always been the whole time. Great stories and choice and consequence will always be fun in games, but that sense of true and unrelenting freedom has always been missing, up until recently. And while we still have a ways to go before we reach the true pinnacle of fully voiced AI NPCs that never get stale, for now Baldur's Gate 3, to me at least, is exactly what RPGs should be aiming to be. Worlds full of interesting lore, characters, and story, along with impactful choice and consequence. But over all of that are systems constructed around full freedom and autonomy, around creating a game that radically realizes the player and their actions, and creates believable consequences for every action. For as great as all